Cannery Row, Chapter 20, Part 3 of Chapter 20. As the afternoon and the whiskey went down, the enthusiasm rose. There were endless trips to Lee Chong's. The frogs were gone from one sack, and Lee's packing case was getting crowded. By 6 o'clock they had finished the gallon of whiskey and were buying half-pints of old tennis shoes at 15 frogs a crack. But the pile of decorating materials was heaped on the floor of the palace flophouse, miles of crepe paper commemorating every holiday in vogue, and some that had been abandoned. Eddie watched his stove like a mother hen. He was baking a cake in the wash basin. The recipe was guaranteed not to fail by the company which made the shortening. But from the first the cake had acted strangely. When the batter was completed, it writhed and panted as though animals were squirming and crawling inside it. Once in the oven, it put up a bubble like a baseball which grew tight and shiny and then collapsed with a hissing sound. This left such a crater that Eddie made a new batch of batter and filled in the hole. And now the cake was behaving very curiously, for while the bottom was burning and sending out a black smoke, the top was rising and falling gluily with a series of little explosions. When Eddie finally put it out to cool, it looked like one of Bel Geddes's miniatures of a battlefield on a lava bed. This cake was not fortunate, for while the boys were decorating the laboratory, Darling ate what she could of it, was sick in it, and finally curled up in its still warm dough and went to sleep. But Mac and the boys had taken the crepe paper, the masks, the broomsticks, and paper pumpkins, the red, white, and blue bunting, and moved over the lot across the street to the laboratory. They disposed of the last of the frogs for a quart of old tennis shoes and 2 gallons of 49-cent wine. "Doc is very fond of wine," said Mac. "I think he likes it even better than whiskey." Doc never locked the laboratory. He went on the theory that anyone who really wanted to break in could easily do it, that people were essentially honest, and that finally there wasn't much the average person would want to steal there anyway. The valuable things were books and records, surgical instruments, and optical glass, and such things that a practical working burglar wouldn't look at twice. His theory had been sound as far as burglars, snatch thieves, and kleptomaniacs were concerned, but it had been completely ineffective regarding his friends. Books were often borrowed. No can of beans ever survived his absence, and on several occasions, returning late, he had found guests in his bed. The boys piled the decorations in the anteroom, and then Mac stopped them. "What's going to make Doc happiest?" he asked. "The party," said Hazel. "No," said Mac. "The decorations," Huey suggested. He felt responsible for the decorations. "No," said Mac. "The frogs. That's going to make him feel best of all. Any, maybe, by the time he gets here, Lee Chong might be closed, and he can't even see his frogs until tomorrow." "No, sir," Mac cried. "Them frogs ought to be right here, right in the middle of the room, with a piece of bunting on it and a sign that says, 'Welcome home, Doc.'" The committee which visited Lee met with stern opposition. All sorts of possibilities suggested themselves to his suspicious brain. It was explained that he was going to be at the party so he could watch his property, that no one questioned that they were his. Mac wrote out a paper transferring the frogs to Lee in case there should be any question. When his protest weakened a little, they carried the packing case over to the laboratory, tacked red, white, and blue bunting over it, lettered the big sign with iodine on a card, and they started the decorating from there. They had finished the whiskey by now, and they really felt in a party mood. They crisscrossed the crepe paper and put the pumpkins up. Passers-by in the street joined the party and rushed over to Lee's to get more to drink. Lee Chong joined the party for a while, but his stomach was notoriously weak, and he got sick and had to go home. At 11 o'clock they fried the steaks and ate them. Someone digging through the records found an album of Count Basie, and the great phonograph roared out. The noise could be heard from the boatworks to La Ida. A group of customers from the Big Bear Flag mistook Western Biological for a rival house and charged up the stairs, whooping with joy. They were evicted by the outraged hosts, but only after a long, happy, and bloody battle that took out the front door and broke 2 windows. The crashing of jars was unpleasant. Hazel, going through the kitchen to the toilet, tipped the frying pan of hot grease on himself and the floor and was badly burned. At 1:30 a drunk wandered in and passed a remark which was considered insulting to Doc. Mac hit him a clip which is still remembered and discussed. The man rose off his feet, described a small arc, and crashed through the packing case in among the frogs. Someone trying to change a record dropped the tone arm down and broke the crystal. No one has studied the psychology of a dying party. It may be raging, howling, boiling, and then a fever sets in, and a little silence, and then quickly it is gone. The guests go home, or go to sleep, or wander away to some other affair, and they leave a dead body. The lights blazed in the laboratory. The front door hung sideways by one hinge. The floor was littered with broken glass. Phonograph records, some broken, some only nicked, were strewn about. The plates with pieces of steak ends and coagulating grease were on the floor, on top of the bookcases, under the bed. Whiskey glasses lay sadly on their sides. Someone trying to climb the bookcases had pulled out a whole section of books and spilled them in broken-backed confusion on the floor, and it was empty. It was over. Through the broken end of the packing case a frog hopped and sat feeling the air for danger, and then another joined him. They could smell the fine, damp, cool air coming in the door, and in through the broken windows. One of them sat on the fallen card which said, "Welcome home, Doc," and then the two hopped timidly toward the door. For quite a while a little river of frogs hopped down the steps, a swirling, moving river. For quite a while Cannery Row crawled with frogs, was overrun with frogs. A taxi which brought a very late customer to the Bear Flag squashed 5 frogs in the street. But well before dawn they had all gone. Some found the sewer, and some worked their way up the hill to the reservoir, and some went into culverts, and some only hid among the weeds in the vacant lot. And the lights blazed in the quiet, empty laboratory.